welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone, the very last Skeptic Zone for 2011. Richard Saunders here, coming to you from Sydney, Australia. It's New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve, and this is episode number 167. We're going to be speaking on this episode with Daniel Raphael and Phil Kent from the StopAVN Facebook group. Stop the Australian Vaccination Network. The Vaccination Network. We'll never get over the fact that they call themselves the Vaccination Network. It reminds me of 1984. Haven't read that for a long time. Things like the Ministry for Information were stifling information and so on and so on. So the Australian Vaccination Group aren't interested in vaccination. They're interested in you not vaccinating your children against deadly diseases. You've heard it all before on the Skeptic Zone. We're going to be talking to Daniel and Phil from the StopAVN group about the recent activities up in Queensland at the Woodford Folk Festival, where the group chartered a light airplane to fly around above the festival with a banner, trailing a banner that said, "Vaccination saves lives." I wish I could have been there to see that firsthand. Hear all about it coming up shortly. After that, we have Dr. Rachie Reports. Now, she's going to be speaking to a colleague of hers, Dr. Corin Storkey, at the Heart Research Institute here in Sydney, about his research into why sugar is good for your heart, and why your breath can really stink, and what's Brazil nuts got to do with it. Bit of a mixed bag, Dr. Rachie. That's coming up later in the show. And of course, if you go to www.skepticzone.tv, you can look at the show notes with links to the various things we'll be discussing on today's show, including that interesting work into heart research. Now, I'm very excited, folks, very excited, not only because it's New Year's Eve. I'm excited because very early next week, in fact, Dr. Rachie and I will be heading for those ABC studios here in Sydney to join Maynard, good old Maynard, for a new program coming up called The Dirty Disbelievers. And the blurb says, every weekend, 6 p.m, starting the 7th of January, across Australia on ABC local radio, digital radio and online, Maynard will be hosting The Dirty Disbelievers radio show. Look out for special guests, Dr. Rachie and myself, Richard Saunders, amongst others. For more information, just go to Facebook and search for Dirty Disbelievers, or check out the link at skepticzone.tv. Can't wait for that. What fun that will be. But let's not wait anymore. I know you've got New Year's Eve parties to go to. I haven't. No, I haven't got a New Year's Eve party to go to. I think I'll just sit back on my favourite couch and watch a good DVD. Have a cup of tea and then go to bed. Or something like that. But before that happens, let's all listen to The Skeptic Zone. Yes, and those delightful notes wafting across the internet of the Nutcracker. The Nutcracker. An interesting choice of music to introduce this segment about the activities of the Stop Australian Vaccination Network group. I'd like to welcome to the show Daniel Raphael. Hello, Daniel.
Hi, Richard.
Hi, and Phil Kent. Hello, Phil.
How are you?
I'm doing really well. I was tickled pink when I found out just the other day what was going on up there at the Woodford Folk Festival. And as I was just having a quick chat to you before the interview started, I, little old me, simply the Vice President of Australian Skeptics, been on the committee for 10 years, out and about, had no clue about the fun and games that was to unfold at the Woodford Folk Festival. We're going to get to that pretty soon. We're going to talk about that soon. But Daniel, from your point of view, let's discuss the formation and the reasons behind the StopAVN, or Stop the Australian Vaccination Network group, which is really a Facebook group, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, we're not incorporated. We're not really anything except a collection of concerned citizens. And it started back in 2009. You may recall Channel 7 did a segment on the Sunday night program, which was a actually really good piece on vaccination, and as it was a really good piece on vaccination, Meryl Dorey was not happy with it and contacted the studio and wanted to have a community forum type deal, and that's what she got the very next week, and I went along to that along with Dr. Rachie.
And me, and
Ratbag. You, and Ratbags, and there were a couple of others there, and we sat in the audience and just listened to her speak, and I mean, with what she was saying, I was sitting there thinking, how has she got so much credence in the media? I don't understand it. I mean, Mike Monroe, who was comparing the whole thing, was actually pretty good at taking it to task, but I feel she got a little bit too much free time, and I went home that day really determined to do something, and I didn't know what to do, so I just started a Facebook group that was about the limit of my resources at the time, and it just kind of went from there.
Yes, well, I well remember being in the studio audience for that taping. It was the sort of the second part of the Channel 7 story on vaccination.
Yep.
And we were sort of all on one side, and Meryl Dorey and her friends, or flying monkeys as we call them, were sort of on the other side. And it's a classic because it's from that time, that show, that we get the wonderful quote from Meryl Dorey, "I have a brain too," or something like that.
And I'd like to rebut that, if I may, by saying my cat has a brain. And a while back, my cat managed to knock out the power to the entire house by piddling into a PowerPoint. Now, is she qualified then to give advice on vaccination?
So it would seem. It would seem.
Because apparently all you need is a brain.
Well, that's what she said. What did she also said? She'd been researching it for so many years or something like that, and she had a brain. Yeah. Well, I mean, we could probably have another whole episode devoted to her particular psychological profile. And
why do I have a song from The Wizard of Oz going through my head right now?
Yes. I'll try not to mention flying monkeys anymore. And how people like Meryl Dorey can be so blinkered, one might say. Do you think that she truly sees herself as the leader of a quest? Yes. Yeah.
I think it's why she has such a hard time admitting when she's blatantly wrong. It's hard for me to sort of think in the same way as her. I can't imagine being so deluded by your own way of thinking that you can't let anything else in.
Yeah, and it is like a religious zeal or religious quest, isn't it?
The term true believer comes into it, I think, and she certainly believes everything she says, and she's got people who believe everything that she says, even when it's contradicted time and time again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, me not being qualified to talk about that sort of state. I mean, although we observe this, of course, in the skeptics many times with true believers of all flavours. That's how it appears to me. But it would be interesting to get a professional to give us their
It would be very interesting. I'd like to see that, actually.
I've heard some opinions, but they're not something we can share on the air.
Probably not.
There's a line from Fawlty Towers that I like, that in the episode called The Psychiatrists.
Yeah.
And the psychiatrist is walking down the stairs after seeing Basil Fawlty up to his old tricks, and says to his wife,
"There's enough material there for an entire conference."
I remember that line. Yes, I remember that line. That's very good. And, well, we might dwell on this topic for a moment, because then there's the other part to it, of course, which is her minions, the flying monkeys,
yes.
her true believers,
yes.
which are there come rain, hail or shine and praise her endlessly on the intertubes.
Yep.
It really is a bit of a case study, isn't it?
It is. It's we've likened the AVN to a cult for a long time, and we've actually gone through the checklist of a cult, and the AVN ticks every box for it.
Yeah.
It's not. It can't be real. It really can't be called anything else.
It's fascinating, and of course, one of the things I find endlessly interesting in this whole business is the way that the other side, for lack of a better term, will use things against us, criticisms. One of them is, of course, that we're all sheeple and we just follow the cult leader without thinking. Well, I can tell you, friends, if you could see me now interviewing you two, you can't see me, but I'm not very glamorous. It's a hot day and I don't care.
I'm wearing a pair of tracky dacks that are torn at the back.
You go. So what I'm trying to say is, we all are very pleased if people listen to what we have to say, but heavens above, we're just as human as anybody else, and we do our best to be on the right course. But I really get the impression that her true believers really think she is the personification of everything light and good.
Yeah, they do, and in fact, there's a. I'm just trying to find it now. Actually, she actually did say something yesterday which really knocked it on the head. Oh, I can actually probably paraphrase. It was so nice to look down on all of you and see your smiling faces looking back up.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
I just get this image of Kim Jong Merrill, you know.
It's the old joke about the monkeys in the tree.
Yeah.
The top monkeys look down and see nothing but smiling faces. The bottom monkeys look up and
see something else. Well, there we are. We're bringing monkeys back into it again. They just won't go away. Anyway, let's get back to the SAVN, the Australian Vaccination Network. What a mouthful that is. SAVN's much easier to say. And, of course, we encourage all our listeners to run to facebook.com/StopAVN. That's correct?
Yep.
And then they can find out much more about the activities and link in, join up. That's the way to do it. Now, because bringing all these things together, we have the situation, and as we record this on Friday evening, Meryl is at the Woodford Folk Festival speaking, but the thing that we can discuss was yesterday's activities, which was Thursday here in Australia, where Meryl was going to have the microphone to herself to talk about autism. And due to community pressure centred with SAVN and the activities of SAVN, we got a much better outcome. I mean, probably better than we should have hoped for. It was just fantastic, where she was relegated to simply taking part in a forum which had real experts on it who were there to advocate to the crowd the benefits of vaccination.
Yeah. I mean, it was a better outcome, but it would have been preferable if they'd just canned her, really. My argument has always been she has no place on a stage with an immunologist. There is absolutely no reason to have Meryl Dorey anywhere near a forum like that. She's not qualified at all to speak about vaccines.
No, isn't she Australia's leading vaccination expert? No, I think I heard that one.
Only in her own mind, Richard.
Well, of course I agree with you. Of course, there's absolutely no place for her to speak at these events because, as the government have pointed out, what she says is incorrect.
Yep.
It's wrong. However, given the fact that there was a pretty good likelihood she was going to speak, at least we got a decent outcome. And let's take our victories when we can get them.
Well, that's right.
So there she was as part of an overall panel. And Phil, you might be able to take up the story here because you were there. You were our man on the spot. Well, when I say our, I mean our side, not the skeptics, of course, because we didn't bloody know.
That's right.
And we didn't bloody know what was going to happen, which was, is it a bird? Is it a plane? Oh, it is a plane.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could fill us in on this wonderful flyby.
Well, unknown to just about everybody, we had a little plane towing a nice big banner over Woodford for 2 hours, a half hour before and half hour after talk, and for the hour in the middle, which said vaccination saves lives. So
that was towing a big banner, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of snapshots of it. Wow, that's fantastic. And I also know that Meryl Dorey saw that pretty early on.
Yes, her reaction on stage was priceless. She actually thanked the Australian skeptics for the free advertising.
Unbelievable.
Isn't it? Yeah, which, of course, Australian skeptics have nothing to do with it. Well,
not only that, of course, you're right. We didn't, speaking on behalf of Australian skeptics, no clue it was going to happen. And but what really tickles me is that she's trying this old trick of thanking the opposition for free publicity, where the free publicity was unequivocally saying, vaccinate, whatever you do, vaccination's a really good thing. So it was a pathetic attempt to her to try and turn the tables,
That's right. Yeah, and it got our message across very clearly to everybody that was there, was pointing up and looking, and everybody had their cameras out. It was a great spectacle.
Now, Phil, being on the spot, as it were, you were in the audience for the talks?
I was. I had to duck out for a little bit, so I didn't see it all. But, yes, I got to see the start and the finish and the question time.
And how did that go? How do you think that went? Do you think it was a good pro-vaccination all over? And did Meryl actually stumble, or did she try her old tricks?
Well, she tried pretty much all of her usual tricks. She didn't really stumble, I wouldn't say. There was a fair bit of anti-vax support in the crowd to start with, but then there was quite a lot of pro-vax support in the crowd as well. And in fact, after the show was over and we were handing out leaflets and talking to everybody, we got nothing but positive feedback.
And, of course, this has caught the attention of the wider skeptical community around the world. And our good friend Dr. Phil Plait was particularly chuffed about all this and wrote a wonderful blog piece.
Yeah, he did. I was on Twitter following the whole thing when I saw him tweeting about something else. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to direct him to the StopAVN and Woodford FF hashtags, and he disappeared for about 15 minutes and then came back with his head exploding. So
that's fantastic. And of course, not only internationally, but maybe more importantly, here in Australia, it made the newspapers and the internet just went into meltdown, as they say. So despite what Meryl would say, oh, thanks for the advertising and all the rest of it, it was undoubtedly a really good publicity victory and moral victory, I would say, for our side, the sides of science and reason and medicine, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, I mean, I think she said that because she was where she was and she didn't really know what was happening online at the time, because it wasn't just the plane in the sky. It was a coordinated effort of bloggers and tweeters, and we basically just occupied the net for a couple of hours with this, and so there was a lot of stuff happening online that she was clueless about until she got home, I think, and found out what really was going on. And today she's been very terse with a lot of people on her blog and on her group. So she's not been happy.
Well, that's such a pity. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, my heart pumps custard.
I tell you what's very interesting too, because the hashtag the hashtag StopAVN, that's the hashtag that everyone's been tweeting under, was getting such a lot of attention. It brought out a few interesting characters out of the woodwork, should we say,
yes.
Including Homeopathy Plus.
Yep, Fran Sheffield. Now, these people are in cahoots with the Australian Vaccination Network. In fact, they've run conferences together, and Homeopathy Plus sell Merrill Dory DVDs on their website. And Homeopathy Plus make absolutely no bones about it, where Merrill will dodge the issue quite a lot and pretend to be pro-choice and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Homeopathy Plus simply and without any confusion advocate the use of homeopathy, magical, fairy dust, sugar water and sugar to vaccinate.
Well, of course they do. That's they make money out of that. So it's not surprising at all.
And that's another thing at Woodford. There's a homeopathic first aid tent.
It's like homeopathic first aid. It's like some skeptics went there just to take the mickey.
There's two people sitting there twiddling their thumbs, nothing to do. It baffles me that they bother.
Although, in defence of homeopathy, it does actually work for two conditions: burns and dehydration, but only in very large doses.
But don't forget hypoglycemia.
Yes,
some sugar pills may help.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we've identified three real things that homeopathy will actually work for, but you need a lot of it.
Well, there you are. It can't be all that bad, can it? I mean, no, it really does. It really does sound like a group of skeptics got together and said, look, here's a really great gag. We'll have a homeopathic first aid camp. They won't believe it. Well, there you go. I mean, the truth is stranger than fiction. So this is... It's a time actually for SAVN to have a drink and say, yes, we did well. We had a good success here, and I think you really, really, really did. But the fight goes on.
Yeah.
But Merrill is in like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kinds of trouble at the moment, isn't she, Daniel?
She's in massive trouble. I mean, she's currently in court suing the HCCC, which has got no chance of winning, and I was speaking to a person who often represents the HCCC, and it's a matter of policy that they go for court costs. So, I mean, Merrill is going to be up to her hilt. She's, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of court fees to worry about. As a result of that, of course, the Office of Liquor, Gaming and Racing is waiting in the wings for the court case to conclude before they pounce. She's under investigation in Western Australia for fundraising without a licence, and she's about to be in trouble in Queensland for fundraising without a licence.
And on top of all that, of course, I think she's in trouble for breaches of copyright.
Yes, she is, and I think there's a lot of people out there who are currently, I guess, seeking advice on the matter, if I can put it that way.
Interesting.
So she has no idea how much trouble she's in. I don't think she either doesn't know or she's pretending it's not happening. Yeah,
it's got to come to a big crunch.
Yeah,
and hopefully sooner rather than later. Yeah. But I mean, it really is good to be part of the same sort of movement that can make things happen. I love it when things happen. People don't just sit back and say, oh, what a terrible situation this is. Active people and collectively have really done something about this. Yeah. And it was a collective effort from the friends and supporters of the SAVN, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, that sort of brings home the point of how we get our money. Because Merrill Dory is convinced that we're backed from some big organisation, and she points to the Australian Skeptics quite often, saying that we're funded by them and we're run by them. It's totally false. We are not a branch of the Australian Skeptics.
I can vouch for that, folks.
Apart from the moral support that we've been given by the Australian Skeptics, there's absolutely nothing. We've got nothing to do with them. And they've got nothing to do with us. We paid for the plane out of our own pockets. We all chipped in. And anytime we pay for things like the advertising in the newspapers in Western Australia when she was over there was paid for by members out of our own pockets. We chipped in. And anytime we need to do something big, we just club it. So there's no... I mean, if she's trying to follow the money, she doesn't have far to go. So,
do you think that she really sincerely believes that people like you and me and other members who support what we're doing literally get some sort of brown paper envelopes every week with big pharma money or something like that? I wonder.
I think she absolutely believes it, because it plays right into the kind of conspiracy theory thinking that she's renowned for.
Well, you certainly see it on the tweets and on the blogs and discussions. Her followers will often say, "I wonder how much they got," or "a bit more big pharma money," or shill, or things like that. It amazes me that big pharma have any money left after they've paid us all off. You know,
that's right. I think it comes from a place of them being so set in their ways that they just cannot believe that anyone would be opposing them without being on the payroll of a pharmaceutical company. I don't think that they really understand that there are a lot of people out there who disagree with them, and disagree with them because they're wrong, not because we're being paid by anybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you and I and many of us do this because... Well, I can say we believe in what we're doing, but we believe in what we're doing in a different way to the Flying Monkeys, for example.
That's right.
We believe in what we're doing because it's been tried and true. It's been put through the ringer of scientific rigor, and it's come out the other side.
That's exactly the point. I am not pro-vaccination. I am pro-science, and science has consistently shown vaccination to be effective and safe. And so, as someone who is science-minded, I follow the evidence, and the evidence is in favour of vaccination.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And as I said before, it's been put through, it's been tested like you wouldn't believe, and tested again, and tested again.
And look, the whole thing about pharmaceutical companies, if pharmaceutical companies were really only about money, they wouldn't make vaccines. They get far more money from treatment of diseases than from prevention. And vaccines often cost companies money, especially when they come up for these occasional pandemics that we get, such as bird flu or swine flu, where they have to quickly research and develop a vaccine that's effective, and they lose so much money from doing that. They would make so much more money if they just let everyone get sick.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, they would make a lot more money if they didn't have huge overheads like testing and production.
Yep.
They could simply sell, homeopathy.
Yeah, they could.
They could.
Even the professor yesterday made a point of saying that he's only ever received maybe $30,000 over 10 years from the pharmaceutical companies.
Gee, that's $30,000 more than I've received.
Yeah,
and he's a professional immunologist.
Yeah. But I mean, she doesn't, or the AVN and their followers have this view of doctors and the medical community that they are all evil.
Yeah.
And yet, when I've met doctors, when I've met people who are in that industry, they got into it because they want to help people. You know, they see people sick and they want to do something about it. And
you're only saying that because you're part of the conspiracy.
Yep, totally. Hang on a second, my brown paper bag just arrived.
Well, keep some aside for me. Look, we have to also mention some other people who, of course, were instrumental.
Yes.
And it was Robin Hilliard who organised the flight.
Robin Hilliard, yeah, he researched it as a possibility, and then asked us whether we'd be up for that. And of course, StopAVN has a bit of a cheeky side, and it was just right up our alley. So of course we said yes, we'd love to. So he was basically the one who researched it, took up the collection, and then booked it and made sure it was all So he was the one that really spearheaded this, and everything that happened online at the same time kind of worked out in the last couple of days before it happened. It wasn't
Amazing.
really part of it. So Robin Hilliard really was the man behind the show. So.
Well, hats off to Robin. And, of course, another name that I've been asked to mention for the tireless press work would be Chris Stevenson.
Yes. She has been tremendous over these past few weeks, really, and especially in the lead-up to the Woodford Folk Festival. She has been the one that has been at the forefront of our media campaign. Given that she's a local up there, she really did step up to the mark. So she's been great.
And she's a lovely writer in her own right. If you read nothing else on this issue, read her 3-part tragedy story in I think it's Mamma Mia.
Yeah,
absolutely beautiful words.
Yeah, she's an extremely good writer, and I'd recommend anyone to get on and read Chris's stuff.
Wow, what can I say? I'm so pleased to be part of, as I said before, part of this whole side of things that can really get things done. Now, before we wind up, Phil, I think you want to give a plug for your pub.
Or our skeptics in the pub.
Yes.
Yes. Normally the first Tuesday of every month at the Plough Inn at South Bank here in Brisbane. Anyone's welcome to come along. Skeptics, atheists, theists, humanists, everybody. We just like to sit around, have a bit of a chat. It's all very informal. You can find us on Facebook or at Brisbane SITP, SITP. But this month we're having it on the 10th because of Christmas.
This month meaning January.
Yes.
Right, which is next month.
The month within the next 30 days.
Well, actually, it depends on when people are listening to this. I hope to get this out in 2011. Might be out in 2012. We'll see what we can do. Whenever it is, it's January we're talking about.
Yes, January 10th is the next one.
All right, Brisbane people, you've had the word, the message. Get to there. You can certainly find out more about skepticism and the work of the Australian Vaccination Network. Run to Facebook, run to Twitter, look at the hashtag #StopAVN. It has been going off and trending, I noticed, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And you can also follow us on Twitter as well. It's basically at StopAVN if you'd like to follow us.
There you go. Folks, Phil and Daniel, thanks very much for your great effort. This has made news around the world, and deservedly so. And all power to you in 2012.
Thanks, Richard. It's been great.
Thanks, Richard.
Disbelievers.
Evil!
Oh, what a lie.
I can hear them all.
What's going on? Give me more, Mr. Announcer Guy.
On ABC Local Radio, digital radio and online. Weekends at 6 o'clock.
The dirty disbelievers. The evil disbelievers. Evil!
I would like to know.
Take the red pill and the blue pill, I say.
I can hear them all.
We'll all listen.
This is serious.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachel Dunlop.
So that voice you can hear in the background. Putting on his glasses, actually, is Dr. Corin Storkey. You are a postdoctoral scientist in the Free Radical group at the Heart Research Institute, which is also where I work, as a matter of fact. Now, the reason I'm talking to you today is because you've just published some really exciting research, which you did as part of your PhD, in fact, which you undertook at the University of Melbourne. And it's received a lot of media coverage. So we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about that in a second, but can we start off just by talking about heart disease? Because I guess that is the focus of this work that you've recently published. So can you tell us, our listeners, a little bit about the statistics and how serious heart disease is?
Yeah, we can talk about that. It's actually not just my focus, but it's the focus of the whole institute. In general, heart disease is the biggest killer of people in Australia and worldwide, I think. It now affects 1 in every 5 Australians, and it's proposed that in current trends continue, it will be 1 in 4 by the year 2050, I think. 1 person in Australia dies every 10 minutes from heart disease. That's quite a lot. And it remains the largest single cause of mortality in Australia. Accounts for 34% and 39% of male and female deaths, respectively. Oh, let's look at cost. Everyone likes to talk about money, and it is an expensive disease.
Yeah.
7 billion Australian dollars every year is the cost of heart disease to our health system.
Yeah, you said it's 15% or in excess of $7 billion of the total allocated health system
there you go.
Funding in 2009 in Australia.
That's what I said.
Which is significant, isn't it?
It's quite a lot of money.
It is. So that kind of leads into the discovery that you've just published, and in fact you've patented this as well. It's derived from sugar, right?
People love this idea of, you can have sugar and it will help prevent heart disease, because it kind of, it's an oxymoron, I suppose. We're always told sugar's bad for your heart, but the thing is, what we've actually done is they're not sugars as you would eat, on your breakfast cereal. They're synthetic sugar derivatives, so they don't act like sugars anymore. But we just used it as a way to excite the public about our invention. People love Wiggins.
It is based on a carbohydrate molecule, but the unique thing about your patented molecule is it contains a compound called selenium. Now, selenium directly mops up or absorbs these free radicals, doesn't it? Yeah.
So basically, I'll explain the whole concept of the project that I devised originally. There's been a lot of research in the last 50 years about looking at selenium. And this was ever since it was discovered that selenium is the active component or the active site of the enzyme glutathione peroxidase, or GPX. Now, GPX is one of the key defense mechanisms that your body has against free radicals. So it's an enzyme that basically floats around in your body, in your bloodstream, and it reduces down a lot of these radicals and oxidants. And the reason why selenium is so good at this is because of the chemical properties that it has from where it sits in the periodic table. It's a metalloid, so it has half metal characteristics and half non-metal, which means that it contains properties of both. So it can be incorporated into organic molecules, as in the case of glutathione peroxidase, but it also has the redox chemistry of a metal, so it can change oxidation state really easily. What it does is, in a biological system, is it acts as a preferential oxidant. So it will react with oxidants, 1,000 times faster than any other molecule, and that's why it's so protective. Now, the interesting thing about selenium is it's actually it's been known about for thousands of years, and but everyone thought that it was a bad metal. They thought that it was really toxic, because back in the days of the voyages of Marco Polo, when they were travelling, there were some countries they went to, and there were these certain types of weeds, and when the horses would eat the weeds that grew around these riverbanks in this country, their hooves would start to fall off. And it sounds really crazy, but they didn't realise at the time, but these weeds, they're called loco weeds, and there's types of them all around the world. They accumulate really high levels of selenium to a toxic point. So when the animals around them eat the weeds, then they start to develop selenium toxicity. And in animals, one of the key symptoms of that is their hooves start to fall off. In humans, your nails start to crack and fall off, and your hair falls out. So they knew about its toxicity effects as long ago as that. They didn't know it was selenium that was doing it. The wonderful thing about selenium is, firstly, it's metabolized by the body. So it's not like mercury or lead where you build up, you accumulate over time. Your body does metabolize it and break it down, but it can be toxic if you have too much. I think the daily recommended intake is 100 micrograms a day, and they keep putting this up and up all the time because they're realizing that it's more and more important. So as long as you keep within those limits, then you're not going to have any problems. And in fact, if you don't have enough, there's far worse side effects to having selenium deficiency.
So where do you get it from in general? What sort of foods contain selenium?
Well, this is interesting, and I did a lot of research about this. And obviously all the smelly foods, because the thing with selenium, it's like sulfur in the periodic table. And if anyone's been to a geothermal area, where you have a lot of sulphurous compounds, you know what I mean, because you get that rancid, rotten egg smell. Well, as you go down that period, selenium is like 1,000 times more smelly than sulphur. So any food that smells a lot has generally got sulphur or selenium in it. Garlic is your prime example. And, onions, all of those kind of really sort of rich foods with a lot of smell. You get it from meat and eggs. A lot of it comes from grain, just from, wheat growing in a selenium-rich area.
Is that because it absorbs through the grain as it grows in the soil?
Exactly. And there's some areas around the world, like New Zealand, has really low selenium levels. And it wasn't until New Zealand actually started importing wheat from overseas that the local populations, general sort of health and well-being started improving, because some of the first settlers found it a really big adjustment to have such low selenium in their diet, and they got malnourished because of it. The superfood, though, for selenium is Brazil nuts.
Oh.
And this is crazy. There's no other element like this. Brazil nuts have almost 100 times more selenium than any other food out there. And I did some calculations based on your average Brazil nut. And to get your daily selenium intake, you need about 5 to 10 Brazil nuts. That's all. That's your daily allowance. Whereas to get the same amount of selenium from garlic, you'd have to have 100 to 200 cloves of garlic. So you can take your pick, really.
Let's think about that, shall we?
Either you go the garlic option, like if you're Greek or Mediterranean, perhaps that might suit you. But yeah, I think I'll stick with Brazil nuts. Here's another point. This is really interesting. There's an episode on House. We all like House. You know House?
Yeah.
House.
I think most of our listeners know House.
Yeah, of course.
Hugh Laurie. We all love Hugh Laurie.
Of course you'd know House. So there was an episode on House where, a guy's sick, hair starts falling out, not well, he's in hospital, and, they like cancer, it's this, how they play that whole game of let's go through 10 diseases, and in the last 5 minutes of the show they'll figure it out. And what actually happened was they claimed that he had selenium toxicity because he was addicted to Brazil nuts. And I was like, that could be possible. And then I did the sums and worked out that this guy would have to be eating about 50 to 100 Brazil nuts a day. But the key thing with selenium is, like I said, it's metabolized. And some of the ways in which it's metabolized, that your body makes these small organic selenides, which are really volatile, and they smell really, really, really pungent. So if you are subjected to selenium for too long, and your body, it starts building up and it can't metabolize it fast enough, then your breath absolutely stinks. And like
a sulfur smell, or what's
it's like a rancid garlic kind of rotting smell. And I'm saying really stink. Like I could be in the other end of a room and you'd smell me. And that was one of the things, because we work a lot with selenium, and our boss always said, if your lab partner starts smelling, can you say something? It's not being rude, because they could have either they just have really bad breath or they have selenium poisoning, And I was like, so obviously it's not realistic. TV isn't real.
But did you SMS into the TV show and say, just test his breath? And
I tried, but
it didn't work.
Hugh didn't get back to me.
Didn't he?
I was like, well, they would have smelled him a mile away and it would have been like, bang, selenium toxicity. But the great thing is, once you remove them from the selenium, the source, you can recover. So if people go, oh, it's toxic, why would you put it in anything? But it's not really. It's it's far less toxic than a lot of other drugs out there.
Didn't you mention to me before that you had problems with that during your PhD, that you would stink when you do your work?
Man, I stank like you wouldn't believe. And I remember this because when we do these reactions, selenium. The step where you're putting it into your molecule is the rancid step, and there's smells like you wouldn't believe come out of this. Because the thing with selenium and sulfur is our body detects it in parts per billion or even parts per trillion for some selenides. And so the tiniest trace, and it's overpowering. And they say, there's another interesting fact. They say that if we detected everything like we detect selenium and sulfur, we would be able to smell as effectively as a dog.
Wow.
So dogs have the sense of smell we have with sulfur and selenium.
So why have we evolved to smell sulfur
I don't know.
more than anything else?
It doesn't make sense. It targets our receptors better. I don't know why.
Is it because of eggy farts or something? Just a hypothesis.
I don't know. You tell me. But there were times when, and it just sort of gets in your hair and in your clothes, like. And there were times when I was doing my PhD in Melbourne. I'd come out and I'd get on the tram. This one time, this bunch of school kids were on there, and they turned around and went, "Oh, it stinks."
And it was you.
It was me. And I couldn't even smell it because I was so desensitized. And then they were like, "Oh," and they started moving away, and they thought that I don't know, they thought I'd been eating something really bad. But it was just a general kind of bad smell. So I had good times in my PhD. I actually just say I was back in Melbourne the other week, and I was doing a large scale up synthesis to try and make enough compound for our next stage of animal trials. And I'm like, this is a big scale. And I took every precaution possible, but I did cause one lab evacuation. The whole
just
floor.
one lab
Just
evacuation.
the one.
Right.
And the whole floor, like, everyone had to leave. They were like, I can't. All the offices on that floor, it's horrendous, the smell. So I feel if this ever goes into a pharmaceutical company, I apologise to those workers.
I was going to say, because doesn't your patent talk about now putting this, getting involved with a big pharma to make it in large quantities?
That's what we're hoping to do.
Right.
So Bag's not. We'll outsource it. We'll send it to Russia or something and get these poor Siberian guys, peasants to,
Hey guys, this is Jay from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, and whoa, hold on, whoa! Everybody knows I'm the only reason to listen to the freaking show, right? I mean, if it was up to me, the show would start with this. Yeah, boy! Well, Rebecca would hate that, probably, but, I mean, I'd rock that. Listen to our show and you can learn about cool stuff like a technological singularity, which is someday when technology progresses so fast that it would make the Industrial Revolution look like a kid's science project. Anyway, come check us out at www.theskepticsguide.org and get your science on!
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, the last one for 2011. Now, if you go to www.skepticzone.tv and look down the left-hand side, you can see our new Maynard's TAM10 Fund thermometer. And if you have a look at that at the moment, you'll see that we're just over the halfway point of raising the necessary funds to buy Maynard that plane ticket to TAM10 in Las Vegas so he can do some reporting for us. And a little bit more money there for accommodation and sundry items and bits and pieces like that. But thanks to the generosity of people like you, we have got over the halfway point in our drive, our donation drive for Maynard. Check it out, have a look. And if you feel so inclined, please chip in. Can't wait to get to TAM10 in July. Thank you all for supporting the Skeptic Zone in 2011. 2011 is a year I will never forget because the images burned in my brain of the Japanese tsunami live on TV as that wall of water devastated the landscape. You just don't forget images like that. Let's hope that we don't see that sort of thing again. But for now, but for 2011, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The show's over now. Wake up, wake up. Hello, the show is over. The Skeptic Zone's over. Wake up, you fell asleep. Wake up, hello. Hello. That's better. The show's over. Sorry to disturb you. Turn off your iPod, take out your headphones and go back to sleep.